this is Gregory with Southpaw Scutati, and today I wanted to look a little bit at Byzantine swords. So usually in Byzantine reenactment, we like to complain about the sheer lack of archaeology. Sometimes there's no helmets to be found, or footwear, or the best tunic that you can find is a tunic from Egypt. And a lot of times within the empire during the period, Anatolia or the Balkans, there's just a severe lack of archaeological finds, whether that would be from a lack of digs or just a lack of preservation. So in this case, we can't actually complain about that because there are several sword finds from the period, which is super awesome. I love recreating artifacts. So my sword here is from Oleg at the True History Shop. So it came out of Russia. So let's talk about the period finds before we look at this. There are several period finds, enough that we've been able to actually develop some sort of typology. And I'm not going to get too much into the weeds with that, but the big points on that are there are two distinct types. So you have the Gabronic type hilts, and then you have the Galo hilts. All of these names, I believe, are in Bulgarian, so I'm going to horribly butcher them, so I apologize in advance. So unlike the oak shot typologies where you're going to look at the blade of the sword, these typologies look at the hilts. So let me take this out and I'll show. And that might be because most of the hilts that have survived are made out of yellow metal, like a brass-ish. So the Gabronic type hilts are different than this. They have a much longer sleeve. They actually come down and they're cut out here, and it's much more decorative. And those are generally relatively dated. So these Gabronic hilted swords are dated to right around the beginning of the 9th century, all the way through probably to the end of the 10th. I had made a mistake earlier when I was recording, and so I wanted to fix that. This timeline right here is from a paper called Swords in Byzantium by Yotov. It came out in 2021, and it's an awesome resource if you are looking into Byzantine archaeological record for swords. There's that first type, and then you have the Galo type. The Galo type is understood to differ because the sleeve here is much shorter. You see that this sleeve here is probably one of the most distinguishing factors of these swords from Western European ones, because this sleeve, it sits on top of, or it's understood to sit on top of the scabbard. So the scabbard has a little bit of a lip there, and that sword sits right down in that. You know, there are some cases in Western archaeology and in Viking Age swords where the top of the scabbard has corroded onto the hilt of the sword, the crossguard. That's not the case with the Byzantine swords. These are pretty clearly very well preserved, and it's pretty clearly part of the crossguard itself. And additionally, we have rather short crossguard here with these little flanges that could be decorative or could be meant to hold swords. And most of the pommels that have survived are actually riveted. So, and rather than a tang that goes all the way through and a peen on the end, these swords are capped. And so there's a rivet that goes through the end and capped with a pommel. Those are some of the distinguishing factors of Byzantine swords. In Galovo, there have been, I believe, 2 different types of hilts found. There's one in Pliska found in 1948. There's another one in the Louvre that's been found. There's another one that I believe is being published soon, but they all share this characteristic of these relatively short crossguards, decorative finials or lips on the crossguard itself, and then the little sleeve there. This hilt is interesting because there were actually 2 found. So one in northeastern Bulgaria was found, and it looks exactly like this. And then an additional one was found in Syria or Saudi Arabia. And it's dated to the same period, and that was sold in a Christie's auction in the early 2000s. So that one has really high fidelity photos available, and that's where this pommel comes from as well, because the Galo find was not found with a pommel. One of the other interesting characteristics of this sword is that it's rather short. The military treatises suggest 4 spans long, and the find in Galo came with a blade, and that blade was 89 centimeters long. That's 35 and a half-ish inches if you are American, and it was convex on both sides. So it lacked any sort of fullering, and it was rounded, so the tip was rounded at the end. Interestingly, that it follows directly in alignment with some of these military treatises that we have that suggest that the sword should be rounded off so you don't accidentally stab yourself. So this follows that typology. So this blade is made for reenactment, so it's got a rather thick edge at 2 millimeters. The tip is could be a little bit more rounded, but it's not. And the blade, it lacks a fuller. And you would think that that would make it a rather unwieldy weapon. And it is rather unwieldy. It's more chopping motions for sure. Seems to prefer that. But it's not heavy. It's right around 900 grams. And the balance point is right about there, a little less, right about there. So that's probably about 8 inches from the hilt, which is not unheard of for Viking Age finds. So to compare this to a Western European sword, I've got one right behind me. And I'm not a sword guy, to be clear. I love studying the history and other things like that. So don't take me for gospel on all of these things. But this is a Type 10. It's a Hanwei Tinker. It's my cheap sparring sword. And but interestingly, it does follow proportions for the 10th century fairly well. 10th, 11th century. It's got a Brazil nut pommel on it. The hilt length or the grip length is about accurate with some of the finds that we see. And the length of the sword overall is pretty similar to a lot of the finds that we see, especially like in Poland and other regions in Eastern Europe. So to compare these two swords, they're actually very similar in size. So this, while it may feel a little bit short to use when you're fighting with it, is actually not terribly dissimilar. I'm trying to line up the pommels, and you can see that the Spathion, the Byzantine sword, is maybe only a centimeter shorter. This one itself is 90 centimeters long in total, and that makes it a centimeter longer than the find in Bulgaria. So this is a Byzantine sword. You see it a lot in iconography. Every soldier was recommended to carry one. Swords in Byzantium, unlike in Western Europe, were mostly understood to be a pretty utilitarian item. If every soldier was recommended to have one of these, there are some theories that they were like standardized hilt types. We found 2 of these exact hilt types, one in Bulgaria, one in Saudi Arabia or Syria. And for a hilt type of this unique, this complex, for there to be 2 of them, it's a pretty unique thing in my opinion. So maybe there were workshops that were working off of standardized patterns or molds, and they were just cranking these out as quickly as they could. The military treatises recommend that people be armed with a sword, an axe, or a mace, depending on the skill of the person. So it could be that if you couldn't afford a sword, you bought an axe or a mace, or or your skill, your ability to use this sword. So you see these a lot in different texts like the Menologian, which is from right around the turn of the century, right around the year 1000. It's a religious calendar. And there are finely dressed men chopping the heads off of martyrs. So that's lovely. Lovely depictions, and really, if you need to brighten up your mood, just go ahead and look at that, because it's great depictions of stuff. But it's a good source for understanding how they wore these things, how they were used. You often see them in the right hand, belted with the baldric, and with their cloaks, and they're fighting. So this is the pretty general Galo type right here. It is a little bit of an amalgamation, because it's got the crossguard from northeastern Bulgaria, the pommel that matches this same crossguard from the Christie's auction, and then the blade, which is the profile and size from Galo. So it's a little bit of an amalgamation, but all of these are based off of finds and sources, and in my opinion, it offers a rather hefty, choppy blade, but it's still fairly light. It could be balanced a little bit better, but these might have been more utilitarian items rather than items of status, at least this general typology. So, but there are multiple different hilt types and shapes, different pommels from Pliska to Galo to the one in northeastern Bulgaria. There's another one from the coast of Turkey, Sirki Limani, and all of them generally show some sort of sleeve. Some might be more decorative than others. And then it appears that they were pommels. It appears that they are made for pommels that are riveted on, and then they have lenticular blades. Thank you for watching. If you are interested in Byzantine reenactment or history, please go ahead and give my channel a like and a follow, and be sure to tune in for next time. Thanks.